Welcome to the Faith Focus podcast, where we explore the depth and richness of the Catholic faith. My name is Daniela, and together we'll dive into the timeless teachings, vibrant traditions, and everyday miracles that bring us closer to God. And if you're finding value in our conversations, please take a moment to like and subscribe. Your support helps us reach more hearts and minds. On today's podcast, we are talking about the benefits of Lent. And we're going to have that discussion through the filter of a new convert, which is my mom. And she's approaching her first Lenten season in earnest. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about that conversation because it's pretty funny. And I'm sure many returned Catholics or new Catholics will relate to this. And if you've been a Catholic a long time, I'm sure you will find this story amusing. And for those of you approaching Lent, maybe in a real way for the first time, this might be a really good way to help your formation in approaching it because it is quickly coming. So my mom was an atheist, we'll call her, almost her entire life, not because she wanted to be or because she was being resistant, but she just never was given the grace of faith. She certainly tried. She tried to believe in a thing, but it just wasn't there. She just never had that internal spark. So I just kind of gave up hope. I often prayed for her conversion throughout my life, but, it's never going to happen. And so I let it go, despite the many signs and hints that it could happen one day. For example, in her case, she used to collect rosaries, which I thought was really weird for an atheist to do. It's funny because now she prays several rosaries a day. So obviously her heart was with the rosary that whole time, even if she didn't know it. So she wasn't with God, but God was with her, obviously. But anyway, so one day she actually had a full-blown conversion. She was touched by the Holy Spirit. It was the most amazing moment, possibly of my life to witness. And we began going back to church. And actually, my mother is the reason I ended up physically back in church after a 23-year absence. So that was a very, very powerful day for my family. Anyway, so my mom now has been going back to church, but really knows very little. I just had to explain to my mom a few weeks ago how all the different Marys that you see are not all different women named Mary. That is all the Virgin Mary, and she's just clothed in how she appeared wherever she appeared in those apparitions. So, she's only just learned, like when I mean she's really in her early formation, and knows almost nothing about our practices. So she's starting from scratch at, in her 70s, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing to witness. So this is her first Lent. So I'm trying to explain to my mom that one of the things you do for Lent is you give up something that is hard for you to give up. And this is a fantastic opportunity not only to feel a little bit of struggle and grow a little bit of discipline and offer that struggle up to God, but 40 days is pretty formative and you can do a lot to transform yourself in 40 days. So if you really want to approach Lent beyond just doing the cursory, I pick something to give up, I won't touch it for 40 days, and then you don't really think about Lent at all, you can really turn Lent into a internal, especially transformational journey. And if you want to get rid of an addiction, like smoking or drinking or something else that's difficult, Lent is a great way to start that. And it's a great reset. I myself, for Lent, have decided to do a 40-day Daniel fast. And to oversimplify it, it's for 40 days, I'm not going to eat anything that brings me joy. I'll live off soup and bread and keep my meals incredibly simple, eat things as close as possible to how they appeared in nature. Just to give you an example, if I'm going to eat an apple, it's just the apple. We'll get into the apple discussion with my mom in a second, because that was pretty funny. If I'm going to cook a chicken, for example, I might roast a chicken, very simply dressed, as opposed to deep frying or putting sugary sauces on it and making it decadent. So for 40 days, I will eat very simply just to live and very healthy. And my hope is that it will reset my palate so that I'm not always seeking these extra decadent, things that has kept me obese for most of my adult life. So that's where I'm hoping to learn some food discipline through this. So I'm going through this with my mom and explaining this. So she says, okay, so I have to give up something that I love basically for 40 days. Yes, Mom. Which actually, she didn't even say 40 days, for Lent. She kept saying Lent. I said, yes, Mom. Okay, I'm going to give up candy. Fantastic, Mom. That's a great thing because my mom is a junk food junkie. So I'm giving up candy. That's a huge sacrifice for her. So good job, Mom. And she says, okay. She's like, how long do I have to do this? I said, 40 days. 40 days? 40 days? Yeah, Mom, 40 days, because it's not really a sacrifice if you're only giving it up for a week, right? So Jesus did 40 days in the desert being, tempted and tortured by Satan. You can handle 40 days without candy, So we're doing this to commemorate what Jesus, the lengths he went to, to get to the place to be able to make the sacrifice he did. I said, and this is our opportunity to become strong and be made resilient. And, so go into it with gusto, Mom. And she's like, okay, I can do this. So I was thinking I'm going to make a big batch of cookies. I'm like, cookies? What for? Well, I can't eat candy, so I'm going to eat cookies. Okay, but Mom, that's like saying I'm not going to do cocaine today, so I'm only going to do heroin, right? So if you're just going to replace it with something else that you love as much, you're not really struggling anymore, are you? So, how about giving up dessert for 40 days and maybe just sticking to fruit? She says, so I can have apples and oranges? I said, sure. I said, that's a fantastic substitution because now you're substituting with something God made you to eat anyway that you don't eat enough of because you're eating all the other garbage. So fantastic substitution. And still delicious and sweet, so you'll get that sweet fix. Mom, I think apples and oranges are the way to go. She says, okay, so I can put whipped cream on it, right? Well, sure, technically, yeah. But again, now if you're turning it into an apple sundae, you've just, again, turned it into that sweet dessert kind of thing that you're trying to get yourself away from, right? So now you're not struggling again. So how about eating an apple in a way that doesn't bring you joy? That's the sacrifice, is that for 40 days, you're going to live simply and remember that God is all you need, right? So anyway, so she's resigned, she's excited, and we've reframed the perspective, but it comes down to the fact that Catholicism, when you do it full on, is hard. And that's going to be the subject of our next podcast. So please pay attention to that one because that'll be a good one too. But Lent is a fantastic time to make a real sacrifice. And 40 days is enough time to start reframing your habits. Even 30 days. 30 days is huge. So if you can do 40, you're really set on a new way of being. So my Daniel fast will be for resetting my palate. Right? 40 days will do that to me. And, help me get over some of the, things that I do too much of that aren't healthy. And you can take it a step further that it's not about just giving up the thing or struggling for 40 days with something or some kind of discipline, but also the internal transformation that's available to you. And maybe, the time that you're not spending eating or drinking or watching things that aren't good for you, you can replace them with better habits that are more fulfilling, like prayer, for example. That's a big one, is actually making time for prayer. And now there's a lot of journals that are out there that will help you make Lent a really beautiful, full, introspective time. I actually just did this with Advent. I got myself an Advent journal. And every single day I read a piece of scripture. I journaled about what it meant to my life. They were journal prompts in terms of thinking about the life I want to create for myself, the future I want to create for myself. So I did a lot of, those kind of life planning journaling over Advent facing, coming up to a new year. Well, Lent is kind of, now the new year has started. You've gotten into habits in this new year already. And Lent is a good time to say, okay, wait a minute, before this year gets away from me, what can I do to ensure I get a better year? So in my case, right, I want to focus on my health. So in my case, the diet is a really big deal. Resetting my gut flora in those 40 days by eating a whole food, Daniel sort of Eden diet for 40 days. That's going to do a lot to reset my health and to boost up my immune system. But then spending another 40 days looking at how my year is unfolding, what changes do I need to make internally, maybe do a challenge, like say for 40 days, I'm going to pray one rosary every single day. Even the days I don't want to, when I don't think I have time, I'm going to find a way to get a rosary in there every single day for 40 days. I guarantee you after those 40 days, you'll probably keep doing it. I was watching a podcast that I love, and it's 2 Dominican priests. I believe it's Pints with Aquinas. And in one of the episodes, they were talking about the second richest man in the world. I don't remember his name, but this was someone that one of these Dominican priests knew. And he did a challenge of doing 3 rosaries a day. And he tried to do it for Lent. It was 40 days. And when he did it, he said that his entire experience of life daily in those days shifted for the better. And he couldn't believe how powerful 3 rosaries were for his business and his life. So when those 40 days were over, he kept doing it because now he can't live without it. So Lent, when you approach it as a challenge and to say, okay, for 40 days, let me live the optimal Christian life and, follow all the rules to the extreme maybe, and do a lot of introspection and a lot of prayer and meditation. You cannot come outside at the end of that not changed. It's impossible. 40 days of complete introspection, prayer, meditation, and discipline will transform your brain. It will transform your body's habits, your body's desires, the way you think. You'll create new synapses. You can completely transform your life in 40 days. And we are not the only religion that has seen the value in that practice. When you look at Ramadan in the Muslim religion has a similar impact. And in their case, what they do is they disrupt your body altogether by switching your timetable upside down. So you eat at night and not during the day. So the struggle's in the day, and then you feast at night, and your body's completely confused because everything is right side up. But what happens when you confuse and startle your body like that is you start activating parts of your brain that are sleeping. And those parts of your brain will kick in and start creating new synapses, new neurons. Your brain just starts going into overdrive and growing and healing and expanding. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. But in order to have your brain do that, you need to do something it's not expecting. So either you need to be in a situation that is new to you, that is uncomfortable, or you need to be going through some sort of a discipline, like having your schedule completely disrupted, which is why retreats are so powerful. When people will go away, they say disappear for 30 days and come back transformed, do it for 40 and it's really well ingrained. So it's a powerful, evolving. It's a powerful formation that can't happen in a week or two. Some things take time. And especially in a world where we're used to instant gratification and not waiting for things, having to wait for something that you love to do or eat or enjoy. And let's face it, if you're giving it up, it's probably not good for you, right? If you were to say, my insulin for diabetes, is I need that to live, I'm going to give that up for Lent. Like, that's not the point, right? So the point is usually the thing you're giving up is something that you love, but you probably shouldn't be doing. So, giving up exercise for Lent is not the way to go. Like, it's not asking you to give up the disciplines that make you better. You're sacrificing the things that you really don't need, but you've been worshiping. Like my mother worships candy. Russell Brand said something very powerful the other day. He said, we are hardwired to believe. So if you're going to choose that you're not going to believe in God, you will believe in something else. You will worship something else because we are hardwired to worship. So you will worship drugs, you'll worship alcohol or food or work. Some people I was one of those people, huge workaholic. So all that dedication I used to put in the church, I just transferred to my career when my conversion happened. When I walked away from the church, and that became a workaholic sort of obsession that then kept me too busy to feel the void. And that wasn't good for me either. So even though work intrinsically is not an evil thing, it can be when you start to worship it. And I wasn't even worshiping the money that it brought me. I was worshiping the busy. I needed to be busy for all the wrong reasons. And work, because it's such a noble thing, nobody's going to look at you and say, hey, Daniela, you work too much as a personal flaw. Instead, everybody claps you on and says, she's always on her grind. Wow, you work so hard. You're so awesome. And then that just feeds that ego demon. So the idea of Lent is bringing all of this into balance. So if you have to get a rosary in every day, and you're going to start every morning in prayer, and you're going to eat well, and you're going to do all the stuff, 40 days will transform you. And that is the opportunity available to us through Lent. But if you are already in a good space, and you don't really need more discipline or whatever, now you're just doing it because it's that time on the schedule, then it's a great time to give up something joyful or something that you love, that you don't really need, that you can just offer that up to God as just a tiny, tiny, tiny token of remembrance of when he went through what he did in the desert. So those are my thoughts on Lent. I wish my mother an awesome first Lent. And I'm curious to see how she does without candy for 40 days. And we'll be talking about Daniel fasts and how hard Catholicism is and why maybe it's not as hard as you think in upcoming episodes. So please stay tuned and follow us, subscribe, like. Thank you for joining us today. I wish you a blessed day.